Have you ever asked yourself how the God of the Bible and Christianity have evolved up to this moment? Welcome back at Beyond Doctrine. Today we are going to look at the gods of the Bible and Christianity. We will look at historical and theological context of the gods we always read about. Please watch till the end and don't forget to comment, like, subscribe and share. The historical context of polytheism and monotheism. The religious landscape of the ancient Near East was rich with polytheism, where numerous gods presided over various aspects of life, nature, and human fate. Central to this milieu were deities like El Elyon, the supreme god of the Canaanite pantheon, Yahweh, the national god of Israel, and eventually Jesus, who would be deified in Christian theology. Each of these figures played crucial roles in the religious and social life of their respective cultures, but their ascendancy over one another reflects not just theological evolution but also socio-political power struggles. Today we will critically examine how El Elyon, Yahweh, and Jesus transformed and at times replaced each other in religious narratives. As monotheism rose to prominence, these shifts often mirrored the consolidation of political and religious power, raising questions about the authenticity and consistency of these divine figures' worship. Additionally, the eventual dominance of Christianity shows a similar pattern, where new religious figures are elevated to positions of supreme authority, just as Jesus overtakes Yahweh in Christian mythology. El Elyon, the supreme god of Canaanite pantheon. Elyon, literally God Most High, was a prominent figure in the Canaanite pantheon, regarded as the supreme deity presiding over all other gods. As the creator god, El Elyon was often depicted as a benevolent paternal figure whose authority extended over a cosmic domain. In texts such as the Ugaritic literature, he is the father of gods like Baal and the consort of Asherah, embodying the archetype of a high god governing a structured divine hierarchy. El Elyon's supremacy was not unique in the ancient world, as many cultures attributed similar roles to their respective gods, whether Zeus in Greek mythology or Marduk in Babylonian religion. What set El Elyon apart was his integration into the emerging Israelite theology, where he would eventually merge with Yahweh. This transition, however, was not immediate. El Elyon in the Hebrew Bible. In early Israelite texts, El Elyon appears in passages like Deuteronomy 32, 8-9, where he is described as assigning different nations to different gods, with Yahweh being given Israel as his inheritance. This reference reveals a henotheistic worldview where El Elyon, as the highest god, delegated authority to lesser deities. Yahweh in this early phase was a national god rather than a universal one. This period represents a fluid theological environment in which Israelite religion was still heavily influenced by its Canaanite neighbors. El Elyon, being part of the wider Canaanite culture, was recognized and worshipped alongside other gods. However, this dual god structure would not last long as religious and political forces moved Israel toward monotheism, and Yahweh began to assimilate the attributes of El Elyon. Yahweh's rise to supremacy, a case of religious evolution. Yahweh in early Israelite religion. Yahweh's origins are often debated, with scholars proposing he was initially a minor deity associated with the southern regions of Edom, Midian, or Seir. Early Israelites worshipped Yahweh alongside other gods, a fact confirmed by archaeological evidence, including inscriptions that mention Yahweh and his Asherah, suggesting that Yahweh had a consort. In this stage, Israelite religion was far from monotheistic. As Israel's national god, Yahweh was initially seen as a warrior deity, a god of storms and battles. His early worship was deeply tied to the political fortunes of Israel, with his favor being associated with military victories and national prosperity. But as Israel grew more centralized under monarchies such as those of David and Solomon, Yahweh's role expanded beyond that of a local or national deity. The merging of El Elyon and Yahweh. The merging of El Elyon with Yahweh represents a crucial moment in the development of monotheism in Israel. During the monarchic period, 10th-8th centuries BCE, as political power became centralized in Jerusalem, so too did religious authority. Yahweh, who had previously been one God among many, began to absorb the characteristics and titles of El Elyon, the High God. Psalm 82 reflects this transition, where Yahweh stands among other gods, ultimately being declared the sole divine authority. This merger was not simply theological but also political. By elevating Yahweh to the status of the one true God, the priestly class and monarchy could consolidate religious practices and eliminate competing cults. The rise of monotheism under King Josiah's reforms, 7th century BCE, marks a deliberate effort to establish Yahweh as the universal God of Israel and eliminate the worship of other deities. Yahweh's transition from a warrior god to a universal deity. As Yahweh absorbed the attributes of El Elyon, he transitioned from a tribal war god to a universal deity. In this capacity, Yahweh was no longer confined to Israel, but was now seen as the creator and sustainer of the entire universe. This shift mirrors broader Near Eastern religious trends, where gods such as Marduk and Asher similarly rose from national gods to supreme, universal deities. However, this transformation came with contradictions. Yahweh's portrayal in texts like the Hebrew Bible retains elements of his violent, nationalistic origins, even as he takes on more universal qualities. This duality raises questions about the consistency of Yahweh's character, as he is simultaneously a God of mercy and justice, yet capable of destruction and vengeance. 3. Jesus Christ, the evolution of a new God. Jesus in the context of Jewish messianic expectations. The figure of Jesus Christ initially emerged within the context of Jewish messianic expectations. Jews of the Second Temple period anticipated a Messiah who would deliver Israel from Roman oppression and restore the Davidic kingdom. Jesus, a Jewish teacher and healer, fit many of these expectations, but also diverged significantly in his teachings, particularly in his emphasis on spiritual salvation over political liberation. At first, Jesus was seen as a prophetic figure or a potential Messiah. However, following his crucifixion, his followers began to claim that he had risen from the dead, and over time, this resurrection narrative transformed him from a human messianic figure into a divine being. Jesus and the deification process in early Christianity. The deification of Jesus was a gradual process, influenced by theological debates and cultural exchanges between Jews, Greeks, and Romans. Initially, Jesus was understood as subordinate to Yahweh. Early Christian writings often refer to Jesus as the Son of God, but not necessarily God himself. This distinction would change with the development of Trinitarian theology. By the 4th century CE, with the rise of Constantinian Christianity, Jesus had been elevated to a status equal to that of Yahweh. The Council of Nicaea, 325 CE, formalized the doctrine of the Trinity, establishing that Jesus was homoousios, of the same substance, with the Father, effectively making Jesus and Yahweh co-equal in divinity, the same evolution we saw between El Elyon and Yahweh, and later we will see Jesus as Yahweh himself in flesh. Jesus as the new Yahweh. In Christian theology, Jesus essentially takes over many of the roles traditionally assigned to Yahweh. While Yahweh was the God of the Old Testament, overseeing creation, law, and judgment, Jesus becomes the God of the New Testament, representing love, forgiveness, and salvation. This shift can be seen as a continuation of the earlier pattern, where Yahweh absorbed the roles of El Elyon. The Christian doctrine of the Trinity, while attempting to preserve monotheism, introduces significant theological complexity. By dividing God into three persons, the Father, Yahweh, the Son, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, Christianity effectively returns to a polytheistic framework in which multiple divine figures share power. 4. Theological inconsistencies and social motivations. Theological inconsistencies in the merging of deities. The merging of El Elyon with Yahweh, and later Yahweh with Jesus, creates theological inconsistencies that challenge the core monotheistic claims of both Judaism and Christianity. These mergers often reflect political motivations rather than genuine theological revelations. As monarchies and empires sought to consolidate religious power, gods were either merged or replaced to serve the socio-political needs of the time. Polytheism, disguised as monotheism. The Trinity in Christianity, despite being framed as a monotheistic doctrine, bears striking resemblances to polytheistic systems where multiple gods hold sway over different domains. In ancient polytheism, gods like Zeus or Marduk ruled alongside other divine beings, each responsible for different aspects of life. Similarly, in Christianity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit operate in distinct roles within their respective domains: creation, salvation, and sanctification, despite being described as one entity. This raises the question, is Christian monotheism merely polytheism in disguise? While theologians have long argued that the Trinity preserves the oneness of God, the practical implications suggest a plurality of divine persons. The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, though said to be of one essence, function in ways that resemble distinct deities, each with their own personalities and divine responsibilities. From a critical perspective, this theological construct may be seen as a compromise, an attempt to preserve monotheism while introducing new divine figures that complicate that very ideal. The role of religious centralization and political power. The rise of monotheism, first with Yahweh absorbing the characteristics of El Elyon, and later with Jesus being elevated to divine status, was not only a theological shift, but also a political one. The consolidation of Yahweh as the one true God parallels the centralization of power in ancient Israel, particularly under the reigns of kings like Hezekiah and Josiah. These monarchs sought to unify their kingdoms both politically and religiously, and the monotheistic focus on Yahweh helped eliminate local cults and rival deities, thus consolidating control. Similarly, the elevation of Jesus in early Christianity served political purposes, particularly after the conversion of Emperor Constantine and the institutionalization of Christianity within the Roman Empire. By elevating Jesus to a position of divine authority equal to that of Yahweh, the Christian Church was able to create a theological framework that justified its growing influence and control over Roman society. The Council of Nicaea and subsequent theological developments were as much about political unity as they were about defining the nature of Jesus' divinity. In both the Israelite and Christian contexts, the elevation of Yahweh and Jesus reflects the way religious narratives can be shaped by political needs. When kings or emperors needed to consolidate power, the gods themselves were transformed to serve those ends. This pattern suggests that the evolution of these deities was often less about spiritual truth and more about social control. 5. Social and political motivations behind theological shifts. Religious centralization in ancient Israel. The evolution of Yahweh from a tribal god to the universal God of Israel coincided with the centralization of religious practices in Jerusalem. As the monarchy grew more powerful, particularly under King Josiah, it became increasingly important to eliminate the worship of other gods that could challenge the central authority. This led to the declaration of Yahweh as the sole deity, and the destruction of high places, local shrines, and any evidence of polytheism. Yahweh's absorption of El Elyon's titles and attributes also reflects this political motivation. By combining the roles of multiple gods into one, the monarchy and priesthood could control religious practices more tightly and enforce loyalty to the state-sponsored religion. This was not an uncommon strategy in the ancient world, as similar processes occurred in Egypt and Babylon, where gods like Amun and Marduk absorbed other deities to create a more unified theological system. The Roman Empire and the rise of Jesus. In Christianity, the elevation of Jesus to divine status, particularly as part of the Trinity, was deeply tied to the political needs of the Roman Empire. After Constantine's conversion to Christianity, the Church rapidly gained power and influence. By establishing a theological hierarchy with Jesus at its center, the Church could present a unified doctrine to the empire, which helped maintain political stability. The Nicene Creed, formulated at the Council of Nicaea, was a political move as much as it was a theological one. Constantine needed to unite his empire, and the theological disputes among Christians over the nature of Jesus, whether he was divine, human, or both, threatened that unity. By declaring Jesus as fully divine and of one substance with the Father, the Trinitarian doctrine helped solidify the Church's control over Christian belief and practice, thereby reinforcing the emperor's control over a united Roman Empire. In this context, Jesus' elevation to a divine figure parallels Yahweh's rise in Israel. Both figures were shaped by the political necessities of their time, and their status as universal gods was used to consolidate power and suppress competing religious ideologies. In conclusion, the evolution of God and the human need for control. The evolution of El Elyon, Yahweh and Jesus illustrates how theological shifts are often driven more by political and social forces than by spiritual or divine revelations. The merging of El Elyon and Yahweh, followed by the rise of Jesus, reflects a broader pattern in human religious history, where gods are transformed, merged, or replaced based on the needs of the ruling class. Yahweh's rise to supremacy in Israel coincided with efforts to centralize political power and eliminate competing deities, while Jesus' elevation to divinity in Christianity served the political interests of the Roman Empire. In both cases, religion was used as a tool to unify and control populations, with divine figures evolving in response to changing social and political landscapes. The theological inconsistencies introduced by these shifts, particularly in the case of the Trinity, highlight the tension between monotheism and the remnants of polytheism that remain embedded in both Judaism and Christianity. While both traditions claim to worship one God, the historical processes that shape these religions suggest that their gods are products of human design, molded by the needs of kings, priests, and emperors. In this light, the evolution of Yahweh and Jesus can be seen as an extension of ancient polytheistic traditions, repackaged to serve the interests of monotheistic religious and political authorities. Far from being a pure, unchanging revelation of a singular God, the history of these deities reveals how deeply intertwined religion and power have always been. Thanks for watching. I hope you are welcome to comment.